We're ready, Mr. Andrew, to call it to order.
Alrighty, Monday, May 11th, 11 a.m. Susan Tully Livesley. We are at our policy committee meeting. I'd like to call to order.
All right. So let's see. Sarah, you want to review the new course proposals?
Yeah, can we do it not in that order? Can we start with the healthcare professionals one first?
Sure.
Please? Thank you. Okay, so our Spanish department has seen some decline in the number in their classes and really has been working very hard to try to increase that number for student interest in the last few years. And you'll remember last year we added the Spanish for Healthcare Professionals course to the scope and sequence that they have. I should kind of backtrack just a little bit. Like, we really are seeing this decline, I think, not because of what we're doing in the classroom necessarily, but because students no longer have a requirement anymore for a foreign language to be able to be admitted into universities. And so
secret.
Yes.
That was always the case.
Yeah, right. It was always never a requirement.
So it's very well known now. Okay. And so kids are kind of saying, like, well, why do I need this? Why do I need this? So to the credit of the modern language department, they're really trying to take a more like pathway, career focus, versus just saying like, you need to have this to go to college. Do you know what I mean? So really kind of changing the purpose and the relevancy behind taking these courses. So anyway, the Spanish for Healthcare Professionals was added last year with great enthusiasm and interest from students, especially our students who are in that healthcare field, pursuing that pathway. And they have asked for the second one to be added and dig deeper into that.
Yeah, how many kids did we have in the first one?
We had one full section.
Okay.
And all of those kids plan on taking this from what most of those kids, yeah.
And when you say a full section, how many students is a full?
About 25 kids.
Okay.
I don't want to say exactly. I'm just.
But it's over 20.
It's over 20. Yeah. Oh, we're not talking about 8 kids.
Yeah. And that's, I'm looking at some of the other ones, and I was wondering how few you would have to have for them not to run it.
Usually around, what is your cap at that? Running a course at the high school, around 10?
10's at the minimum, that low range.
Okay.
I mean, we like to see more. That's not very efficient though, so we don't want to run a whole bunch of classes at 10, or more.
So this is the second one in the sequence because we had such great interest for it. So I'm really excited. They wanted to propose it last year, and I said we need to wait until we get the interest from the kids. Yeah. So the kids are asking for it, so that's exciting about that one. The Spanish for the workplace is.
Does this lead to a certification or a credential?
It does not.
Okay.
The Spanish for the workplace course is a course for other pathways, essentially. So there's other pathways that having workplace language for students would be very beneficial. If you take a look here in the description, Jason, they specifically named different career pathways that they would highlight. So construction, food service, law enforcement, landscaping, agriculture. And they want to start building the language for the students that would be used in those career areas. So they can specifically help.
Dustin, when you have a chance, could you check with Milwaukee Area Tech, Waukesha? Gateway discontinued their credential. It's an internal credential, not a nationally recognized one, but they have one for related to this type of programming. So I wonder if either Milwaukee Area Tech College, Waukesha, or Blackhawk has a credential, a certificate of some tech that we might be able to
do that.
Align and
Great idea. Great idea.
And these textbooks that they want are going to be classroom textbooks?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Just a class set. And then the third course proposal is a Spanish for conversation. So kind of moving beyond the academic language that is taught in like Spanish 1, 2, 3, and 4. This one would be more for students, just, I mean, it's conversational Spanish, just to be able to speak that. And really kind of gear things toward other careers, mainly travel, I would say though.
How did this come about last year? I don't remember. That
The Spanish for healthcare
Yeah,
professionals,
yeah,
yeah. So what they were saying was that their numbers were kind of going down in Spanish, and so they were trying to gear it toward different career pathways and different career fields, so that students would see the value in learning the language for their career choice.
Pretty cool.
Mhm.
I like that they're interested. I want to take more.
Me too, especially our HOSA kids, like, we had like, I don't know what our exact number is, but we always land around 80 to 100 kids in HOSA, so.
I wonder if there's any HOSA event that.
So I was just gonna speak to that. This year, I was able to actually judge at HOSA this year at the SLC. And the category that I was judging in was called home health, and the home health scenario was where we had a woman, there was a person who was playing, a 70-year-old woman who was Spanish speaking and didn't speak English very well. And so the home health aide who came in to do the competition had to work through the language barrier of that patient that they were working with to be able to like drain her urinary device that she had, and there was other things that I had to learn that I didn't have a lot of knowledge about. But anyway, the point is there's huge value in being able to communicate with patients that have limited English speaking abilities, and so that's kind of where these things are coming from. That makes sense. Yeah. Other questions?
When would this take place? I mean, is it for next school year?
One school year after that.
Okay,
Mhm. But the healthcare I can't even talk. Healthcare for professionals, there we go, would be for actually next year. The other two would be on a regular rotation.
Okay.
Yeah. Because they want those kids to be able to get into that.
All right, so these would then go to the board for formal approval.
Mhm. We'll have Margaret and Christine there for the board meeting as well.
Any questions on those?
That's great.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I just want to give them lots of kudos.
Kids interested in foreign language.
Right.
Let's go.
We did just hire one of our, was she an intern or just student teacher?
Intern.
Middle school intern. Who happened to be certified in English, German, and math.
She's a
So we
unicorn.
hired her to do the, what's that?
She's a unicorn.
Yeah, so she can do German, English, and then our teacher who filled in for German can do German EL. So we've got German locked down for middle school. It's hard to, yeah. So that was a nice combo that, yeah. On to. Okay, class rank Loudy system.
All right, so in looking at our current system right there, you can see all of the additional classes above the college level, AP level classes that are offering a honors point. And in taking a look at it, it looked, when we talk about our work-based learning, we were offering an honors point for a student doing a co-op is what we call it, kind of our homegrown work-based learning experience that isn't necessarily connected to learning in the classroom, and it's a requirement of 90 hours for a work-based learning experience versus our students also doing a youth apprenticeship, which is 450 hours, and it is tied to 1 credit of congruent instruction. So in taking a look at that, when I came in, it just was something that kind of popped out at at first, this doesn't really look very equal. So working with Sarah, and we met with the counselors and the administration at the high school, just kind of take a look at this and see what's going to be best for our students. And we determined that kind of taking that honors point away from our homegrown co-op experience, that is only a 90-hour requirement, keeping it for our 450-hour youth apprenticeship certified experience, because that does also tie into 1 full credit of congruent instruction plus all of the workplace competencies that they must meet while on the job. So it shows all of the learning outside. So it is a very rigorous experience, versus the 90 hours could be kind of really any experience that is a work-based learning experience. Valuable, however, not quite as rigorous as it is to accomplish the youth apprenticeship. So that would be that update there. Also taking a look at that and not putting a letter grade for the youth apprenticeship. So the youth apprenticeship in Wisconsin has blown up recently. It is getting huge. More and more schools are taking advantage of this because it's a win-win for our students and for our communities. And it requires 450 hours in a calendar year. So our school year, our trimesters, or another school district semesters doesn't really align with being on grades, because a student can onboard at any time as long as they finish by the following August 31st. So for our students to earn a youth apprenticeship and to earn the honors point, we're changing the language to say a student must have all 450 hours complete and all finalization paperwork completed by the senior's last day to earn their honors point. Now, the way we used to have it kind of stated, if you don't finish your youth apprenticeship by the senior's last day, you don't get the grade, it doesn't count. But that kind of took away from our students still being able to earn that state level certification. So this change of language is now allowing our students to still earn the honors point as long as they finish before their last day of their senior year, but also for those students who may onboard in January into a youth apprenticeship program, but they aren't able to hit all 450 hours by the end of their senior year last day, they can still continue into the summer earning those hours towards their 450, and I can submit that paperwork so that they still earn that certification. They just won't have the honors point, and it won't count towards credit as part of their graduation requirements. So it's creating more flexibility for our students. We're not taking anything away from our students. We're creating more flexibility by still allowing them to finish after they graduate, because it technically is a state certification that can overlap or overflow into the summer.
Additionally, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just wondering, do they receive a grade or is it just completion?
They have received a grade. So they would be graded by trimester. So we would take 450 hours, divide that by 3. They would have to be by those benchmarks at the end of each trimester. That doesn't really create a lot of opportunity for our students who are involved in so many other things. So let's say we have a student who is in a fall sport that takes up a ton of their time. They may not be able to work as many hours during the fall, but then they can really ramp that up in the winter and in the spring. So then that first trimester grade was always a really gray area on how we do that. Now we can onboard to the last day a student can technically onboard with the state of Wisconsin is March 1st. So if a student signs up in the middle of February, they can still complete a youth apprenticeship. They can earn that certification. We count that as a certification that student's earned. So we submit that for alternative funding. But we can bypass the whole honors point piece by changing this language, saying as long as they finish by August 31st through the summer, we can do that. This just kind of clears it up that if you still want that honors point, you can do that. You just need to make sure you're done by your last day of your senior year.
What's been really wonky is assigning that letter grade for completing hours.
Yeah.
I'm for eliminating the letter grade simply because I would assume for certification they have to meet certain benchmarks.
Yes.
Right. And so as long as they've met those benchmarks, letter grades are not important at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So a student could earn or get all those benchmarks early on, but then not. The timing is not flexible enough for our employers or for our students and families. So this kind of creates that flexibility to offer for all students every opportunity.
Any other questions or thoughts on that?
I had a weird question.
Yeah.
This is the most I've seen of all these policies that's most updated. Is there a reason why this gets updated every couple of years?
Because it's law-based system.
I was never seen.
To be very straightforward. Not for the system. I was not for weighted grades when that started, because it was started based on prejudice. And this was to replace the honor or weighted grades. And so I do realize that I'm not gonna get rid of that.
Wow. Interesting.
It was past the two board meetings or a board meeting before I was made official on a 4-3 vote. Just to be passed, because they'd worked a lot on it, but they didn't have the framework. And so they passed it, and they said, here you go, Mr. Talek and Mr. Trotter, you guys now define what the lobby system is. So we went and, like Eric Gordon said, they had a weighted grades where you could, if you took a college level course, for example, you got a B, then it counted as like up to a 5.0 scale. That's where some states have those where you'll hear kids, oh, I graduated with 4.45. It's like, well, how'd you do that? It's because you took college level courses. And so you talk about inflated like GPAs and grades, and universities just back it out anyway. They're gonna put the GPAs on a 4.0. They do it unweighted. Yeah. So the piece that was going on with that whole weighted grade piece was they also then allowed kids to audit courses because it would hurt your GPA to take an unweighted course. So if I'm trying to be valedictorian, taking an elective that was on a 4.0 scale instead of the 5.0 scale, even if I got an A, that's going to bring down my overall GPA. So then you had kids that were auditing classes, which means, yeah, I'm in the class, but I'm not getting a grade for it. And that created a whole nother issue. So that was all before I was here. The Loudies is what I will say to its credit, it has encouraged a certain rigor level and so forth, and kids moving towards it, but it's imperfect. There's still vestiges of that old system. Like most Laudi systems don't have valedictorian and salutatorian. Ours still has, the board previously still wanted Val and Sal. I've always said, unless you have all the kids taking the exact same courses from the same teacher in the same semester, they're having a different educational experience. So how can you say that, oh, well, this kid's valedictorian, that kid's salutatorian? That's why universities do summa cum laude. They don't do valedictorian. It's, within that criteria, and then you select. So that's a different policy for a different time that we can look at again. But there's been a number of iterations to try to address different nuances of it from back when 2014 when it was first put in. Yeah. So then, and because we list which courses get that, now we did go back. See, we added these because the definition is college level equivalent through transcripted equivalent or the College Board AP, Project Leadway, or post-secondary. Additionally, the following courses. So these were, because that was kind of the argument I made. Well, if you go and take a 100 level German course in college, it's not that different than German 1 in high school. You're teaching, like when they take AP German, if they pass AP German, how many college credits do they get?
My son ended up getting 12 retro credits.
Yeah.
He was told that he needed to take German 3 at UW Stevens Point, and if he passed German 3 with a B or better, then he would get the credits for German 1 and German 2.
Yeah, not just German, but the 100 level and the 200 level German classes.
That's what I.
So like when I came back from El Salvador, that was the same thing. They said you take the 300 level course and we give you all the 100 and the 200 level, which were 3 100 level and 2 200 level courses at Utah State University. That's how they did it. So we put in German 3 because those are, when they go and take the placement test, they're at that college level and above. So that's where we added in these other courses, but like we've always lacked, it's hard to get within we've tried. It's nearly impossible to find college partnerships that will give these higher, college level courses for the performing arts type area. So kids who are in the arts tend to struggle in getting high on the Loudy system, if that makes sense. So
It started in the 80s. And when I say it was based on prejudice, it was that the board looked at those students in the top 10, and they noticed that there were a number of students that were in ag and in shop classes. And they just didn't think it was right when you look at GPA that the kid that got an A in ag should be the same as the kid that got an A, and we didn't have any AP courses back then, but and so that's when the weighted grades came.
because the valedictorians weren't having as rigorous a high school transcript as what was at least
Well,
perceived.
that's
At least perceived.
the kids that they were complaining about,
Mhm.
really bright kids.
Yeah.
And it was because they wanted that.
Mhm.
It wasn't that they were looking, I can build up my GPA if I take
Now, in
supposedly easier courses.
In
But,
theory, New Glarus should have had a quadriplegic nonverbal student as valedictorian because she had a 4.0 through her IEP or specially designed instruction classes. She had an A, and the way the policy was set up, there was nothing to do. And I'd have a citizen complain in the community every time they saw her on the high honor roll. They're like, how is she? Well, she's meeting her IEP goals.
the one satisfaction I get is I am sure those board members who are in the graves right now are rolling around to see that it's youth apprenticeships and not an academic course that is getting them the Loudy points. And I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I do think that that's the difference with the system and the purely weighted grades as well. Is when you add those honor points and you say these are the things that are rigorous that we're defining as rigor, along with that GPA and pairing them together.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a perfect system, and I'm not saying that kids don't game it, but it does help them to make those pathway decisions, like you were talking about, those kids who are truly interested in agriculture and that's what they wanted to do, to pursue that and not be penalized for underneath like a purely weighted system versus this.
150 hours. So
It's
Yeah,
rigorous.
It's about 15 hours a week
Rigorous.
if they start September 1
Yeah.
through the end of May.
that's,
Mhm.
I mean, weird comparison, but how many class hours are there? If you're taking a class, you got how many class hours? is
Well,
that?
5 hours a week for,
72.
for a 1 credit class, 5 hours a week for 2 trimesters. So that would be 15 hours for the YA for the entire year. So that would be like
Wow.
You're giving up a lot of courses that you're taking.
Yeah.
Some of our students are leaving early, some of them are arriving late, some of them
Mhm.
take a full school class load and just work at night and on the weekends. A lot of our CNAs are taking full days of classes and then they work weekends.
Yeah. So you're earning your point.
For sure.
You're
100%.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
rigorous standard,
I'm just thinking,
especially because so many of our students are also in the musical and are in sports and in
Right.
other clubs and activities that
Yeah.
they don't have a lot of free time.
I think I like the way I said, I like the whole program. I'm just thinking if somebody had a question about why they get amount of point.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and we've had YA in there.
450 hours.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
YA's been in there, so that's not a new departure. YA's been in there for
It has been in
years.
there.
Yeah.
The change is
Just-
this year.
Tweaking it, yeah.
Which is insulting. To have that C minus,
Mhm.
I think that's insulting.
Mhm.
If you would tell me that everyone that got Loudy points could just scrape by with a C
Oh, like a
minus,
C minus.
Whereas someone else that might not have had as many Loudy classes had A's the whole time.
Hey, what if we just, here's the thought. Why don't we just strike that,
I'd be for that.
the grade altogether, because it's already factored into their GPA. Cause
They
it's
would
just,
be, it would bump them regardless, is what you're saying.
and I'm saying that, yeah, let's, you get, it would just make it, I'm just bringing it up from a processing standpoint. They don't have to go back and try to back out an honor point for a kid who had a,
Are you saying
D
you put
or
it up
whatever.
higher?
I would, if you're gonna have a grade, you're gonna have to have it higher.
I have an issue though if we didn't put it in there at all, because you want a kid who got an F to get an honor point.
well, they wouldn't have completed the class. They wouldn't have earned the credit.
Okay, so they get.
But
a
they
D.
still could.
Well, that's fine. You get an honor point, but your D is gonna jack your GPA out. And the whole Rowdy is honor point times honor point
That's
times
the way I feel
GPA.
about C minus too.
Mhm.
Is that truly an honor?
Is
I
it-
think they probably put that in because if you don't get that level for like Gateway, or they're not counting the course towards your degree. So nobody's complained about it.
Well, the other piece is if you're taking a rigorous class, like an AP class, and you're stretching yourself, and this is the first time you've ever taken that and you don't do very well. in
Hey,
it,
if I took
You know,
AP Physics or Cal
Right.
3, I'd be pretty
Right.
happy with the D. I think that'd be very honorable for me.
This is actually an interesting conversation from a non-academic, right? If you're getting a C, you're still getting the point, the honor point, and you're getting your credit. But if we bumped it to a B, you're not yours. If you bump it to a B and you get a C, you're not getting the point, but you're still getting the course credit.
Mhm.
So you're saying that we should bump it to a B to get both. And now those students that do the extra work and get a higher grade, they get both. So it's really getting, I'm gonna call it 2 points versus 1. You would be in favor of increasing it to a B.
I would, yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that there's a lot of game playing. A lot of game playing. And of course, the more courses you take that give you lobby points.
Right.
Obviously, if I'm taking a lot of courses, I'm probably not going to do as well
Right.
if I concentrated on something.
A C is going to hurt them worse than taking the, yeah, with the GPA. That's the other thing. Sometimes the kids don't realize, like the universities and the colleges are still basing academic data off of that overall GPA,
Right?
Not your Laude points. So like my daughter who had 2 Bs her freshman year and then nothing but A's through all of her college courses, she got a 25% scholarship for tuition. Had she not had those 2 Bs, it would have been 100% tuition.
Wow.
So it's a huge stake. So like, and it varies from institution to institution. But if you go and look at their financial aid charts and what they give, most of them will spell out. If you have like a 3.96 or above, you might get 100% tuition. If you're at a 3.85, it's 75%. A 3.75, 25%. It has a big factor on the financial contribution that they get. So GPA is still really important. So on that flip side,
Now I see why it's revised all the time. This makes sense.
Yep.
yeah. But then you have to think of, okay, this is kind of the rule book they've been playing under for X number of years. So when you tweak it, then yeah. All right. But we haven't had complaints about it
No,
in several years.
no.
Yeah.
The only thing we've had to really tweak was the number of points for the Laude points for each one of like the cum laude, the magna cum laude, just because to make adjustments based on how.
Well,
kids-
this is our longest stretch. It's been 4 years.
Yeah.
We haven't had a change. This is our longest
I'm
stretch.
sorry for that.
And I really. change that, but that's what, because.
We didn't even change that. That grade thing was wonky. We tell people what to do.
Oh, because, yeah, because it was hard to grade the white, we're like, how are we grading that white?
What's the rubric for?
Okay.
Yeah.
So are we okay forwarding that?
I'm fine.
All right.
I'm scared.
If you wanna have a discussion and other stuff, because my understanding is the person that will have the highest GPA will not be valedictorian.
Not necessarily, but that can
Yeah,
take place, yes.
and that's what I was talking about, the game plan. If that's your target, you can play this system very well.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's it, yeah.
So like my son had a friend who she had a 3.9, a much higher GPA. I think Damon was kind of a slacker in high school. He had a 3.5 or 3.6, but Damon finished, I think, 13th in the class on the Laude system. And, she said, well, that's not fair that you're ranked higher than me. And I remember him saying, well, if I took the classes you took, my GPA would be as good or better than yours. So it's totally fair. So there's a difference in that piece. And so the Wisconsin, this isn't related to that, but there's a Wisconsin tuition, there was a tuition award, and we still do that one based off of GPA, where by state statute it's GPA.
Yeah.
So sometimes the student who receives that award isn't the valedictorian because they may have a higher GPA but not as many allotted. And that certainly can happen, especially if they're not taking as many rigorous courses. This system, the class rank, guaranteed admission, guarantees that the top 5%, top 10% of the class following grade 11 are automatically top 5% into UW-Madison, top 10% into any of the UW schools. To be honest, our top 5% get into UW-Madison anyway if they want to, is what I've seen. I haven't seen an issue or heard of an issue of kids not getting into UW-Madison that are in our top. But that's the state statute, and so in order to have it based off of our lottery system instead of the GPA, we need to have we have to apply for, is it called a variance or
It's a waiver.
a waiver? Yeah, this policy would allow us to determine the top 5 and the top 10% off of the lottery system instead of the GPA, which aligns with how we do our class rate.
What we're looking to do is just not have miscommunication with the kids. Like everything that we do is based on the Laude system and determining the rank based on the Laude system. And then we have to go after they're done being juniors and say, oh no, wait, it's this thing right here, this one isolated thing that we have to submit to the state. This is only about your class rank based on GPA. And so then that's a whole nother option or opportunity for miscommunication to basically happen amongst the students of which one is the one that's important here, if that makes sense. So anyway, there was a lot of confusion when we moved to applying for, I shouldn't say applying, but doing this as a district, the Wisconsin Guaranteed Admission with the students. And so it'd just be nice if all the systems were aligned and we didn't have different things in different pockets. And so DPI just has given this waiver option. And so when the counselors had found out about it, they were like, hey, this would be really nice just to get everything all aligned. If we could base it off of our system versus strictly GPA. So we have to bring it up with you guys first as a policy committee. And then the board would have to approve this. And then we can actually apply for the waiver with DPI and see if they're going to approve it. So that's the process for this waiver, if that makes sense. What I do like about this is our top five, our tiebreaker is not based on something random, like, what's our tiebreaker based on now? Like, if there's a tiebreaker, we have to go 5 decimal places to try to figure it out. The Law Day system will help kind of even things out more. And have less of those just purely mathematical situations that could happen.
That's what we discussed last year.
We have
Yes,
got
that is
the
what we discussed
5,000,
with this
yes.
last year.
The tiebreaker.
Yes, the tiebreaker. Yep. I'm just glad that DPI has given us this option to do the waiver. It's nice that we can align the systems.
All right, are we okay with that one?
Well, I'd love to stay for this sports.
Oh, wow.
Don't worry.
Easy stuff's coming.
Oh, yeah, that's not a lot we have to go through on this.
There's only 3.
All right, which numbers first?
Thank you.
4120.
Thank you, Sarah and Dustin.
Yes,
Thank
thank you guys. Better bring a big bouquet of water.
Saying 40.
Big doo-doo.
Yes.
And employment of support staff. So we have to pick one of the following options.
So this was one where we, right now, the board
Yes.
approves everything.
Yeah, so by state statute, the way we're currently set up, the board handles support staff like professional staff and all of them. You do not have to have it structured that way. Support staff can be hired by or determined by administration if you prefer. So for example, in New Glarus, it was set up that way. Professional staff all went through the board, support staff went through administration. So those didn't come to the board. There was once, not that I would go, there was once that I had to dismiss a cook on the spot that was just, not that we couldn't do that now anyway, it's just that case just didn't go through the board, it's handled at the administrative level. So if we're following current practice, this would be we would select this one. The board shall approve employment, fixed compensation, established term for all staff, for the staff members. So I think for the policy standpoint, since we're not, I would just check what we're currently doing. That's a different discussion we can always have later, unless you guys feel strongly that.
I think it's nice that the board knows. Not that anything would change if you went to the other one, but the board knows what happened.
Yeah, and I can't say that it really slows down or would change the practice anyways, because I would, yeah. So I would just recommend we stick with what we've had. Let's see.
So this next one will just be consistent with.
Up above, so it'd be. Sorry, Jody, I'm not marking it how you like it.
You're good.
All right.
We do now with that third one,
Our current practice is the first one.
first one.
Do we want to add any of these? These are all.
Right now, do all applications for employment go to the same person?
No, not necessarily, so I don't see. Well, the relative status being employed. Yeah, we follow that, follows our. Protocol. I wouldn't adopt this one because again, the board's not supervising that employee or doing the evaluation. So I wouldn't want to restrict our employee pool. But that's just me. It's up to you all on that one. Thoughts? Yeah,
I don't know.
I had my
Oh,
the first school district I worked in as a principal. It was kind of comical because 3 of the board members' spouses all worked in the district. And so when we'd go to compensation, they would like have to recuse them. They just couldn't vote on the compensation. But the vast majority of items, they could vote on. But yeah, it was a little wonky sometimes. Do we have enough here? Because 3 of them had spouses. But they were different unions. So 2 of them were teachers, 1 was staff. So
You might be solving some of the problem right now when I look at the people that are retiring that are spouses.
Well, I will say there's nobody on the board currently who has any family member that works for the district, right?
Ed.
Oh, yeah, Ed's daughter, yeah.
Funny how Ed always comes up in the old conversation.
Are we deleting that one?
Okay. You guys are good with us deleting and allowing board members' kids or, to work? I would adopt this one, which is intentional misstatement. If you guys are okay with this, I would adopt this too. I don't think we do this, or I can't think of a case, but that would be nice if we can just go ahead and start the employment.
Yes.
I would adopt that. Why does it have the parentheses over here, Joe?
Receive, should it be employed or receive?
Oh, I see.
recommendation? Be employed.
Yeah, I put the employee. Oh, okay. Professionals, This is all federal requirement for what's considered highly qualified for Title I. So that's all boilerplate. Grammarly really does not like them. I'm getting really bad scores on my Grammarly. Oh, this is Jody's. Anything else on this one?
Not with
You
me.
good? Adam? All right.
And the next one will be 4124.
We do not give the support staff a contract, we give them a letter of assurance. Is what it's called, right? Because your school year, support staff and police shall be notified in writing reasonable assurance of chain of employment. They're not considered contracted employees or at will, but so we issue the letter of assurance.
This is basically so that they unfortunately can't go and apply for unemployment and we get thanked for that.
So would recommend adopting this.
Yep.
Okay.
For sure.
And then 4140.
Do you want to give authority for termination to the district administrator, which is capitalized, which means and or designee, or do you want it to be majority vote of the board?
You fine with the district administrator?
Yeah, I think district administrator.
Support staff, employees. I don't know why I would put this in policy. I mean, in some cases, we would allow them to resign. In some cases, we might want it as a termination on record, like.
Yeah,
You could select may there if you wanted to keep that sentence, but. Or you could just take it all out.
I guess, I mean, that's how we operate, depends on the scenario, but. This, should we leave it in, put the may button? Support staff members subject to termination may be given an opportunity to resign,
so we would still be giving them the opportunity. They're not gonna just.
depending on the circumstance.
Right, yeah.
We may, like, if you inappropriately touch a kid, I'm not gonna let you resign.
Right.
You're gonna get terminated, yeah.
You can deny someone from resigning.
We have the board, our math teacher wanted to resign and the board terminated him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Cause the board wanted a, record that it was a termination.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear that all the time, like, you're fired, no, I quit. Yeah, so, he could just say, I quit. You can't stop someone from resigning, I do know that, cause we had again, my first year as a principal, we had a part-time Spanish teacher and she was offered a full-time job in Rhinelander. She was like 0.85 with us. And she lived in Rhinelander and the superintendent didn't want her to resign. He's like, she's under contract. And so it got grieved. We were to the hearing officer and he's looking at the superintendent like, what do you mean she can't resign? He's like, well, she has a contract. He's like, she's not in, slavery. People can quit their job if they want to quit their job. His point is, in Wisconsin, you can call, so you can't make someone not quit. That was the judge's point. Anybody can quit a job. You can't make them, just because they have a contract, you can't force them to come and work somewhere they don't want to work. The recourse is you can call the EPI and say this person was under contract and quit, and you can pull their license for a year where they can't use it at the other district. But because she was part-time, you couldn't do that anyways if you wanted to, because they have a right to seek full-time employment. So, yeah, that judge made it clear you can't force someone not to resign. Anybody can quit with it, which makes sense.
Can you give me an example where you might rescind a resignation?
Yeah, I would say like they know, I stole a bunch of cigarettes and stuff, was using it on the charge card. We had a support staff member doing that. And, we start an investigation and they just say, I resign. And we could say, well, hey, wait, we're looking into this further. We're gonna terminate you. I don't,
But
it's,
that says a resignation once accepted,
Oh.
not then be rescinded.
well, I should say Jane Franz, well, there's a different scenario once accepted. Like Jane Franz submitted a resignation. I think she's on tonight's meeting, but she had called me because she was interested in a different internal position. She's like, can I rescind my, the board hadn't approved it, but say you had approved it tonight, and then she found a different position that she wanted to be considered a transfer to. Or just changed her mind. Hey, after looking at my numbers, I decided I do want to come back next year.
So like it can go two ways. So let's say you have a not great employee who doesn't fit in the culture that you're kind of wanting to encourage, and they resign. And then same day the district needs this like position, and they say, no, I don't want to resign anymore. I want to be considered for that job. In that situation, you'd be like, no, I want to continue to accept your resignation. We wish you the best of luck. But likewise, you could have your best support staff say, you know what, I found another opportunity here. They resign, they take the night to think about it, and the next day they come back and they say, you know what, I changed my mind. I want to stay here. Well, are you willing to accept rescind my resignation? So I'm trying to figure out why it would be in policy.
I would put, because up here, you gave the authority of the district administrator to terminate. I would also put in, I would give the authority here to let the district administrator accept a resignation on the support staff, because statutorily you can. If you don't, there may be a support staff member that we want a resignation from. And in that case, we haven't ever had it happen here. I've never had this employee issue, but I've seen where school boards will call a special emergency meeting to accept a resignation so they can't change their mind or rescind that after they've submitted it in writing. So like I know of a neighboring district where there's a teacher who's been very problematic, very critical online, and they sent this email that said, you can consider this my resignation. My more formal, lengthier one will come in a later date. The board's like, let's get the meeting scheduled to accept the resignation, but they have to schedule it on a different off night because the district administrator can't just accept it because they're a professional staff. In this case, if you had a problematic staff member who said, yep, I want to resign, then we could take the resignation and accept that. Otherwise, they could rescind it before the board. They're not truly resigning until the board would accept that resignation. But up above, you already gave the district administrator the authority to terminate. So keeping in line with that, I would go ahead, I would adopt both.
I was just saying, hearing that, I would recommend that.
Well, I don't know if because you may want someone to resign their
That's what I was
resignation.
thinking.
Yeah.
Let's say someone resigns because they have an opportunity to take another job,
Mhm.
and for some reason it doesn't work out, and you go, boy, we'd love to have you back.
Well, but do you get caught if now we've hired for the position, they say, I rescind my resignation? Because we can always, if they're a good employee, we say, great, we'll hire you back.
I think the word may in there also gives the flexibility.
Well, but in that one, once accepted, may not be rescinded. I think that's definitive. That's saying
That's
you
true.
can't.
But to your point, we can just rehire them.
Yeah, we could rehire them. I think that's to protect the district
Yeah.
against somebody, you've now moved on, Bill, and they're like, I'm rescinding my resignation. So I would recommend adopting both if you're okay with that. Again, cases which we've never had to deal with here that I can think of, right, Taylor? We good with that?
Yeah.
All right, what's the next one?
That's it.
That's it?
Yeah, we just have our early grads.
All right. All right, those that are voting online, have a good one. Thank you for attending the open meeting.